From that time on, the Indians' treatment of us was very different. We were invited to their village for a feast to celebrate the recovery of the lost families, and after we had made a litter from saplings to carry the sick woman in, we all started off down the mountain. On the way, the Indians told Long Arrow something which appeared to be sad news, for on hearing it, his face grew very grave. The doctor asked him what was wrong, and Long Arrow said he had just been informed that the chief of the tribe, an old man of 80, had died early that morning. That, Polynesia whispered in my ear, must have been what they went back to the village for, when the messenger fetched them from the beach. Remember, what did he die of? Asked the doctor. He died of cold, said Long Arrow. Indeed, now that the sun was setting, we were all shivering ourselves. This is a serious thing, said the doctor to me. The island is still in the grip of that wretched current flowing southward. We will have to look into this tomorrow. If nothing can be done about it, the Indians had better take to canoes and leave the island. The chance of being wrecked will be better than getting frozen to death in the ice floes of the Antarctic. Presently we came over a saddle in the hills, and looking downward on the far side of the island, we saw the village, a large cluster of grass huts and gaily colored totem poles close by the edge of the sea. How artistic, said the doctor, delightfully situated. What is the name of the village? Popsipetel, said Long Arrow. That is the name also of the tribe. The word signifies in Indian tongue, the men of the moving land. There are 2 tribes of Indians on the island. The Popsipetels at this end and the Bag-Jagderags at the other. Which is the larger of the 2 peoples? The Bag-Jagderags, by far. Their city covers 2 square leagues. But, added Long Arrow, a slight frown darkening his handsome face, for me, I would rather have 1 Popsipetel than 100 Bag-Jagderags. The news of the rescue we had made had evidently gone ahead of us. For as we drew nearer to the village we saw crowds of Indians streaming out to greet the friends and relatives whom they had never thought to see again. These good people, when they too were told how the rescue had been the work of the strange white visitor to their shores, all gathered round. The doctor shook him by the hands, patted him and hugged him. Then they lifted him up upon their strong shoulders and carried him down the hill into the village. There the welcome we received was even more wonderful. In spite of the cold air of the coming night, the villagers, who had all been shivering within their houses, threw open their doors and came out in hundreds. I had no idea that the little village could hold so many. They thronged about us, smiling and nodding and waving their hands, and as the details of what we had done were recited by Long Arrow they kept shouting strange singing noises, which we supposed were words of gratitude or praise. We were next escorted to a brand new grass house, clean and sweet smelling within, and informed that it was ours. 6 strong Indian boys were told off to be our servants. On our way through the village we noticed a house, larger than the rest, standing at the end of the main street. Long Arrow pointed to it and told us it was the chief's house, but that it was now empty, no new chief having yet been elected to take the place of the old one who had died. Inside our new home a feast of fish and fruit had been prepared. Most of the more important men of the tribe were already seating themselves at the long dining table when we got there. Long Arrow invited us to sit down and eat. This we were glad enough to do, as we were all hungry. But we were both surprised and disappointed when we found that the fish had not been cooked. The Indians did not seem to think this extraordinary in the least, but went ahead gobbling the fish with much relish the way it was raw. With many apologies, the doctor explained to Long Arrow that if they had no objection we would prefer our fish cooked. Imagine our astonishment when we found that the great Long Arrow, so learned in the natural sciences, did not know what the word cooked meant. Polynesia, who was sitting on the bench between John Dolittle and myself, pulled the doctor by the sleeve. "I'll tell you what's wrong, doctor," she whispered as he leant down to listen to her. "These people have no fires. They don't know how to make a fire. Look outside. It's almost dark, and there isn't a light showing the whole village. This is a fireless people." Then the doctor asked Long Arrow if he knew what fire was, explaining it to him by pictures drawn on the buckskin tablecloth. Long Arrow said he had seen such a thing coming out of the tops of volcanoes, but that neither he nor any of the Popsipetels knew how it was made. "Poor perishing heathens," muttered Bumpo. "No wonder the old chief died of cold." At that moment we heard a crying sound at the door, and turning round, we saw a weeping Indian mother with a baby in her arms. She said something to the Indians which we could not understand, and Long Arrow told us the baby was sick and she wanted the white doctor to try and cure it. "Oh Lord," groaned Polynesia in my ear, "just like Puddleby. Patience. Arriving in the middle of dinner. Well, one thing. The food's raw, so nothing can get cold anyway." The doctor examined the baby and found at once that it was thoroughly chilled. "Fire. Fire. That's what it needs," he said, turning to Long Arrow. "That's what you all need. This child will have pneumonia if it isn't kept warm." "Aye, truly. But how to make a fire?" said Long Arrow. "Where to get it? That is the difficulty. All the volcanoes in this land are dead." Then we fell to hunting through our pockets to see if any matches had survived the shipwreck. The best we could muster were 2 whole ones and a half, all with the heads soaked off them by salt water. "Hark, Long Arrow," said the doctor, "divers ways there be of making fire without the aid of matches. 1. With a strong glass and the rays of the sun. That, however, since the sun has set, we cannot now employ. Another is by grinding a hard stick into a soft log. Is the daylight gone without?" "Alas, yes." "Then I fear we must await the morrow, for besides the different woods, we need an old squirrel's nest for fuel, and that without lamps you could not find in your forests at this hour." "Great are your cunning and your skill, O white man," Long Arrow replied. "But in this you do us an injustice. Know you not that all fireless peoples can see in the dark? Having no lamps we are forced to train ourselves to travel through the blackest night, lightless. I will dispatch a messenger and you shall have your squirrel's nest within the hour." He gave an order to 2 of our boy servants who promptly disappeared, running. And sure enough, in a very short space of time a squirrel's nest, together with hard and soft woods, was brought to our door. The moon had not yet risen and within the house it was practically pitch black. I could feel and hear, however, that the Indians were moving about comfortably as though it were daylight. The task of making fire the doctor had to perform almost entirely by the sense of touch, asking Long Arrow and the Indians to hand him his tools when he mislaid them in the dark. And then I made a curious discovery. Now that I found that I was beginning to see a little in the dark myself. And for the first time I realized that of course there is no such thing as pitch dark, so long as you have a door open or a sky above you. Calling for the loan of a bow, the doctor loosened the string, put the hard stick into a loop and began grinding this stick into the soft wood of the log. Soon I smelt that the log was smoking. Then he kept feeding the part that was smoking with the inside lining of the squirrel's nest, and he asked me to blow upon it with my breath. He made the stick drill faster and faster. More smoke filled the room, and at last the darkness about us was suddenly lit up. The squirrel's nest had burst into flame. The Indians murmured and grunted with astonishment. At first they were all for falling on their knees and worshipping the fire. Then they wanted to pick it up with their bare hands and play with it. We had to teach them how it was to be used, and they were quite fascinated when we laid our fish across it on sticks and cooked it. They sniffed the air with relish as, for the first time in history, the smell of fried fish passed through the village of Popsipetel. Then we got them to bring us piles and stacks of dry wood, and we made an enormous bonfire in the middle of the main street. Round this, when they felt its warmth, the whole tribe gathered and smiled and wondered. It was a striking sight, one of the pictures from our voyages that I most frequently remember. That roaring jolly blaze beneath the black night sky, and all about it a vast ring of Indians, the firelight gleaming on bronze cheeks, white teeth and flashing eyes, a whole town trying to get warm, giggling and pushing like school children. In a little, when we had got them more used to the handling of fire, the doctor showed them how it could be taken into their houses if a hole were only made in the roof to let the smoke out. And before we turned in after that long, tiring day, we had fires going in every hut in the village. The poor people were so glad to get really warm again that we thought they'd never go to bed. Well on into the early hours of the morning the little town fairly buzzed with a great low murmur. The Popsipetels, sitting up talking of their wonderful pale-faced visitor and this strange good thing he had brought with him, fire.